Mora knives have been a knife company that has been loved by many for a very long time. You can see there on the blade, carbon steel, made in Sweden. And that has been a recipe that has just worked for years and years. Hey guys, this is Luke, as you probably know by clicking on this video. And just letting you know, that is the time I am videoing this review. And that is in the morning, as in 2:16 AM, not PM. So bear with me a little, please. But yeah, this is my review on the Mora Bushcraft Black. Now, as you probably know, I haven't done many fixed blade reviews on my channel. I've done a Gerber Warrant, and it wasn't too positive. But this will be a whole different pace because I just love this knife. It's this one of those workhorses that just does everything and just doesn't talk back to you. It's one of those great things, and for the value that's offered, it's unreal. But I'll get into that later. Right. This is a epic little bushcraft knife. It'll carve, it'll do everything you need, and because of it, it'll carve and do everything you need. And one of the reasons is because it's a Scandinavian ground blade, or a zero grind, which means from this grind line here, if I can just get the light hit it, there you go. See all this portion here that's being reflected? That is the cutting edge. Well, mostly anyway, but I'll touch on that in a second. Yep, this is a bushcraft knife that is designed to carve and to work day in, day out, and take the abuse that you're going to throw at it. Also, this could be a great wee pack knife for bug out kits, general camp, utility, fishing knife. Well, maybe not this version, you probably want a stainless version, but it's just a great knife. Well, this is the carbon steel model. The Bushcraft Black only comes in the carbon steel, to my knowledge. But yeah, we're given a 4 1/4 inch blade overall, with a very nice drop point. There's no swedge, it's just ground, and it's really actually quite aesthetically pleasing to me anyway. I'm quite a fan of those sort of drop point type blades. You're given plenty of belly, but with a good flat edge for any carving that you might have to do. So overall, the blade is brilliant, and an upgrade that the Bushcraft Black has over all the other Moras is the blade stock. This is 3.2 millimeters, or around 1/8 of an inch. Most Moras are an awful lot thinner than this, and that was one of the reasons why I sort of stay away from them. But this one, because it's so much thicker, it just sort of inspires a bit more confidence, and you can feel it in hand that there's a bit more there than a typical everyday Mora. Overall length of this is 9 1/8 inches overall, with a weight of 4.3 ounces, which is outstanding, I must say, for a knife that offers this much capabilities. Overall weight, actually, with the sheath, which I will talk about in a bit, is 5.8 ounces by my scale. So this whole package here is 5.8 ounces, which is very capable. But yes, the blade, it's not a full tang knife, I will mention. It comes down to about yay far. And for the tasks I'm going to do with this knife, I'm okay with. I'm not going to super hard use this knife. It'll be that more camp type knife. Well, I say that, but I've actually been very abusive to my Bushcraft Black. And you'll probably look at that blade and go, wait, that hasn't hardly cut anything. You've probably just took it out of the box, and well, it doesn't come in a box, but you probably just lifted it out and thought you'd do a review on it. But no, I've been very abusive to my Mora Bushcraft Black. This is my second Mora Bushcraft Black. This was my first Mora Bushcraft Black. As you can see, this one has been very heavily abused. I've resharpened it as a result. I have striked ferro rods off the spine, which is, I will note, is very sharp, which means you can do that very well. Actually, just let me, there we go. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. Very good sparks, and it throws them very well. And that's just a cheap ferro rod, which has been in the house for years. But very good sharp edges. And I've been, as I said before, I've been very abusive to this knife. So much so, I broke off the tip as a result of being so abusive. There you can see my shoddy resharpening job, which is probably not the best sharpening I've ever done in my life, but it was the first time I've actually freehand sharpened on a stone, which is pretty cool because of this Scandi or zero ground blade. Now, I say I've been very abusive on this knife, and I have been, even to extents of splitting wood. I've carved extensively. I basically took 3 days and used this knife to an outstanding extent. I made 3 fires. I've split wood for those fires. I carved. I done a lot, and I even done something which most people would kind of cringe at whenever you think of a Mora, but I even went to the extent of using it as a throwing knife. Basically, I had it in my hand, this one, and I was just like, here, I really like the way it feels, and the fact that the balance is just right. If I can, well, take my word for it, it's just right in this sort of area here, right in the halfway sort of mark. And I was just like, you know what, I'll see if I can get any consistent throws out of it. So I started throwing and throwing and throwing, and probably for a good 3 hours or so, over the period of like 3 days. And that's whenever the chip happened. Basically, I missed my target and it went smacking into a rock, and then that happened. But it's still a knife I'm going to use. The whole cutting edge itself is fine. And then after I went outside and resharpened it, actually I'll grab a bit of paper here. This is whenever you'll see how shoddy my sharpening job is. But you hear that, it kind of snagged there at the end. But sharp enough. And that's just through like printing paper, I imagine. I'm sure that will still carve and work very well for anyone with that sort of edge. Moving on down to the handle. Yeah, the handle is a plastic handle with a rubber overmold. That for my hands now, remember I've got small sized hands, and I'll see if I can zoom out a little. Stay there. Yeah, I've got small sized hands, so that's sort of how that sits there. But for me, in my hand, it's a little chunky, but nothing that I'll complain about, because while working and carving, it's very comfortable. Surprisingly comfortable, I'll be honest. It's just one of those knives that your hand doesn't seem to get all that fatigued when carving. Because of this rubber, it might look kind of slick, but it is rather grippy. I'll just set that off to the side. The handle is rather grippy. You can look, there's, for the most part on the handle, there isn't all that much texture. Yes, we've got some texturing up here where you focus, there we go. Up here where could simulate type jimping, but I don't ever find myself holding the knife in that sort of format. It's very much just an overall like hammer grip. But that texturing comes here near the rear of the knife and underneath where it would sort of like catch your pinky for the most part. I actually find these two parts, these two pieces of molded traction very good for whenever you deploy it from the sheath, which actually I'll talk about now. The sheath is just a very lightweight plastic sheath with a swivel belt loop. It's got a drainage hole you can see down through, which helps for cleaning. It means you can just flush out any dirt or whatever. It'll not help with rust resistance because it's carbon steel, it's going to rust. And if there's any water on the knife or in the sheath, those beads of water will still be on the knife, you know. But it sort of clicks in pretty well. And I personally just have it more like that in the bag. But there's no real rattle. It seems to fit and hold in the sheath very well and rather snug. There I've got some molded in branding, the Mora logo and company name type thing. But yes, in the knife I said, with the handle I said that this traction, molded traction here, I find helpful when extracting the knife. And that's because, if I can get it this frame right, whenever I take this knife out of the sheath, I sort of wrap my hand, these two fingers here, pinky and the ring finger, around and hold it like that and pull, which means whenever I extract the knife, my other fingers just sort of rested in that place where they should be, and then that means I can actually put the knife back in rather well as well. On the sheath, that is another note, is this somewhat texture like jimping to help push, have a bit of leverage against, to help withdraw the knife. I find that as a no help at all personally. I just like grabbing a handful of the knife and pulling. That's just my own personal preference. Each to their own, of course. Back to the blade. As I said before, it's made out of a carbon steel. It's rather good actually, it holds its edge rather well. In resharpening, I found that it actually came from factory with a very slight micro bevel. There you can see, actually, see if I can get it, the light hitting it right. There, if you see along the edge, there's a reflection of light. That's actually a different bevel than the true Scandi grind, which I'm pretty sure I've accomplished here whenever I resharpened the knife. If there's any other edges, it might be a bit more convex maybe. Like as I said before, I don't sharpen knives on a stone, so I'm more of a Spyderco sharp maker kind of guy personally. But it takes an edge rather well, as you've seen. It slices through paper. Rather well. And that's me sharpening it, so imagine what it might be like if it was you or someone who actually has some skill. Not saying that you don't have skill, but I don't. So yeah, it takes an edge and it holds an edge rather well. I didn't need to resharpen it. It was more of a point of I wanted to, because of all the chips, like this chip up here at the tip. Whenever I broke the tip off, it wasn't the only damage done. There was some rolling near the tip and a few smaller chips on the edge itself. But I can still feel some slight nicks whenever I run it along my nail. I can feel wee nicks, but then again, from factory, I can feel some wee nicks, and depending on how the light hits it, you can see where there's some that's just not quite perfect. But I'll actually touch on this now, but for the price point of this knife, I'm not going to worry about that, because this knife, which is probably more as higher end bushcraft type knife, you're talking £30 to £35. Now, there's an option where you get a fire steel and a sharpening stone in a sleeve type format that goes over the sheath. That's more expensive, but for just the knife and the sheath, it's perfect for £30-35. I'll put down in the description where to go get it, here in the UK of course, for the guys in America or wherever, Blade HQ or knifeworks.com, those sort of places are a sure bet to have them, and for good prices. I don't actually have any knives that I could really compare to this in its overall sort of class as a super lightweight, hard use bushcraft knife. Well, I say hard use, as in like you can throw a lot at it and get no real backlash to you. But the only thing that I could think of would be the Spyderco Bill Moran, I think it is. It's a VG10 blade with a rubber handle, very similar to this. Again, not full tang, but personally, after what I've done to this particular Mora, I'd say it'd be rather fine, especially as like a backup knife or a camp knife that wouldn't get super hard use, but yet if you really needed it, you could rely on it. Some knives that I personally own, which I've been enjoying lately, that I think could fill a similar role, one of which is the sadly now discontinued Benchmade Bone Collector. This is the, if it will focus, it's the 15005 model. This is in D2 steel. It's got a flat ground blade with a slight recurve. Focus. Come on. There we go. And it's got a very high flat grind with a very nice stonewash finish. And it's got, this particular version has walnut handles. This one is rather thin in hand, especially in comparison to the Mora, but overall this is a much smaller knife, as you can see there. And if I put them butt to butt there, you can see you're getting a good bit more blade. But this knife, it takes quite a lot, this Benchmade Bone Collector, and I hope that they haven't ruined it with the new Hunt, but I can't see Benchmade really ruin a good knife. A knife that should be fairly well known, or it is fairly popular here on YouTube at least, is the Cold Steel SRK. This is in Aussie stainless steel. It's a very good thick blade stock, sizable blade, a very high traction rubber or craton grip with very nice mouldings to hold it in your hand. And yeah, this is another great option. It's a much heavier option over the Mora, but as you can see there, you're getting a lot more knife. Not that much more in cutting edge. If I compare that, there you can see that there isn't a sizable increase in cutting edge, but this has got more ability, I think, because the Cold Steel is a full tang knife, and it's just got more heft, which means I think you could do more in the way of chopping. If you come back, just hold it, grip it hard there. If you have a lanyard, lap it round. I think you can just get more momentum. This has got no chopping ability at all. The Mora, that's one criticism, but I find that if you notch, you'll be able to do the tasks rather well. So yeah, that's the Cold Steel SRK. So yeah, price range, though none of these knives, well, the Mora is just the cheapest outright, it just is. This one you're talking about £80, and the Cold Steel you're probably talking around the 100 price point for the Cold Steel against £30. But jumping up in the price range completely, to another sizable knife. Well, especially in comparison to the Mora. I'll just move the Benchmade out. Just make some room for this one. This is the first time you'll see this one probably. But this is my Falkneven, and I hope I pronounced that right. As you can see there. It's very pretty. Yep, this is a larger knife overall. A similar size of grip, I'll be honest. Both of which are very comfortable. For me, again, small hands, this is a bit of a more narrow handle. But there's plenty of room, and even with gloves it sort of fills it out a bit more if need be. But I find that this is a beautiful knife that will do a substantial amount of work. But price difference in these two is probably about £100 of a price difference alone, which says a lot. But you're getting a completely different knife with this. You're getting a full-time higher end knife with a laminated VG10, which I might touch into some other time. But you're getting a thicker blade stock on the Falkneven. I do hope I'm pronouncing that right, but you're getting a similar blade stock as the SRK with the Falkneven. But something these knives all have in common against the Mora is in fact that it's full. They're Benchmade included. They are all full tang, and the Mora is not. It comes to about there, and that's something that you need to weigh up yourself, whether or not it's important to you that you have a full tang blade for what you're going to use it for. For me, this is a backup fixed blade to have in the bag for whenever I really need to rely on it, because I after what I've done over the days of using this, I can trust it. It does everything I need it to do and more, and it just takes abuse so well. I don't know if these three will even get anywhere near as much use and abuse, but the Mora stands proudly beside every fixed blade knife and will do anything and everything that they will, but all at a much lower price point and far more accessible than most other knives. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, one thing I need to touch on actually is if you do choose to have a Mora in your pack or whatever, I do advise that you have a wee stone sharpener. This happens to be a Falkneven DC4 stone sharpener. Comes in a wee leather pouch, and there you go. And I advise that you see these wee small nails. I advise that you have some of them just in the inside of that sheath for the stone, because whenever you're out in the field and you have to resharpen your blade, at least you can with the Mora because of the Scandi or zero ground blade. So yeah, that's just something to know. But anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it's quick, but sure, hey, it's just knife TV for you. But anyway, thanks very much. Be safe. God bless, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.